So it appears, Congressman, that we are going to hear from Jim Comey in front of a Senate committee in September, but he's a lawyer and a smart one. Do you expect that anything he says is somehow going to implicate himself?
Well, John, we saw Sally Yates basically throw Jim Comey under the bus. So I want to see what Jim Comey has to say about not only setting up Michael Flynn, but also about the fact that he took the Steele dossier, a very flimsy report, and used that to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. And then when the FBI knew that the Steele dossier was nonsensical, it wasn't substantiated, they went back to the FISA court twice to get renewal authorizations to continue to spy on, at that point, the president and his team. So I'm really curious to see what Jim Comey has to say. And John, at some point, the buck has to stop with somebody. So is that McCabe? Is that Jim Comey? Is that Susan Rice, Joe Biden, President Obama? I don't know, but we can only find out if the Senate calls Jim Comey to testify.
Well, let's take a look at some of the people who have been listed, subpoenaed to come testify in this crossfire hurricane investigation. James Comey is up there near the top of the list. James Baker, James Clapper, interestingly enough. There's a whole list of Obama administration era officials who are part of that list, but we have learned from NBC, NPR reporting that James Clapper essentially has been told that he is not a target of the investigation. Does that surprise you? I'm sorry, James Brennan, I should say. Does that surprise you?
Well, I want to see what the Durham report says before I start talking about this, what I call the merry band of never Trumpers and who did what. But thankfully, Durham is looking at this. But we need to call in these individuals to see who abused their power, who was directing somebody to lie to the FISA court to get these warrants, and who was trying to set up, or why people were trying to set up Michael Flynn. Somebody was directing it. And again, we need to see where the buck stops. So the Durham report is going to be very telling. Hopefully that will come out soon. And when Senator Graham starts calling these individuals to testify before Congress, the American people are finally going to get to see what was going on at Jim Comey's FBI.
Let's talk about the Durham report, though, because the conventional wisdom is that if it gets wrapped up in less than 90 days before the election, it's not going to be released until after the election. Well, that 90 days is a few weeks away. So are we going to see that Durham report anytime soon?
Well, we should get to see the Durham report, John, because that Durham report is going to do two things. One, I think that indictments are going to come down because we know that somebody had to lie to the FISA court, so that somebody had to commit perjury. So there should be at least one indictment, or one indictment, there should be more. But two, the American people have the right to know who was calling the shots and what nefarious actions were taking place and who was directing it. Again, this could go beyond Jim Comey. It could go to Susan Rice. It could go to Vice President Biden, President Obama. But the American people should be informed of what was going on. And John, let me just say this. Not only, we got to stop focusing just on politics. If the FBI can do this to a individual running for president and then a sitting president, if they can abuse their power to go after President Trump, what can they do to me and you? What can they do to the average Joe? The abuse of power is really what's so alarming here.
Let's talk about what's going on the West Coast right now, specifically in Portland. The mayhem, the riots continue there even after federal forces essentially backed off. What do you think about the way, the protesters said, we are protesting these federal officers who've been sent to our city without our say-so. Now those federal officers are not there, and the mayhem goes on.
Right. Well, first and foremost, this is really, we need to look at the far left local officials, the far left Democrats, the city council members, the governors even, who are not only allowing this to go on, but sometimes they're encouraging and fostering this behavior. So first off, we got to call out those radical elected officials in these states and municipalities. Second, it's been a complete misdirection saying that these individuals, these rioters, were attacking federal officials because federal officials came to these areas. President Trump sent in the federal officers to protect U.S. property, to protect federal personnel that are in these courthouses. So we shouldn't be surprised that now that the federal officials are pulling back, or the federal officers are pulling back, the rioting is still going on and the attacks are still occurring because the officers were sent in response to the rioting in the first place.
The president says that federal officers could get that situation in hand very quickly, but so far, Portland says they're not welcome. Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, thank you.